talking about learning challenges and things that mothers might experience this month, I thought it would be good to share some of the practical advice that we've picked up from others and learned through our own experiences along the way about helping kids who've got learning challenges or even been diagnosed with specific labels to grow up and to be able to function with those things and not be defined by those labels. So there was a lovely conversation on Facebook recently where a mother said her child's got this problem with getting organized and she can't leave him for a couple of minutes and then he loses track of what he's supposed to be doing, and he's a young child, and you gave some very good tips and advice. So let's just chat about those kind of things.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, exactly that is that if you have gone and had your child diagnosed with something, don't let that label define them, because then what happens is that you end up putting a kid into a box and saying they can only function within this paradigm. And that's not normal in the world. In the world, they're going to have to interact in a variety of different places. So it always goes back to what we say, and we're raising adults, not children. So what I do today should be for the old child, not for the young child. And I should be continually stretching and growing them. So if I say to them, well, you are on the autistic spectrum and all your relationships are going to be difficult, and you will only be interested in these one things because this is who you are. That means that I've now defined them by the label. Whereas I prefer, and what I did with my own children with their variety of things that they collected, was saying to them, this is the area where you will be challenged in. Your relationships may be difficult. How can we work now to make them easier for you later? Or if you're struggling to read body language or facial expression or tone of voice, how can we work with you so that you can stop and pause and think, well, what are they really saying? And in fact, just a little anecdote, emojis were just so hard for our children to actually know which emoji to use in a conversation on text so that they were conveying the right thing. And we actually had to do a thing, well, let's go and take a look and see what do those emojis mean, and
I've got them wrong too, so and I don't have those troubles, but anyway,
yeah, so I think it's always about taking something that could be a weakness and equipping a child so that they are able to develop that into the strongest thing that it can be. So that conversation that you were speaking about, that's called executive function. So that's the fancy name, kids who struggle with executive function. A lot of kids dawdle and they daydream, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got executive function issues. But when you've got a child who consistently can't be ready on time, doesn't know what to put in a bag when they're going to sport, can't plan their work day, then you're kind of looking and saying, oh, do we have executive function issues? And then what we tend to do as moms is want to deal with the school. Let's deal with getting the schedule right at school. And we don't need to do that. We can let our natural life teach them in terms of get them to say, we have to have lunch at 12. You're going to make lunch for us, but because it takes you a long time, do you think you should start at 11:30, or do you think you should start at 10? You kind of give them time for their processing so that they can say, okay, no, I'll probably need 40 minutes because, I need to get this out and I need to get that. And, for some kids who stuff like that comes naturally, it may sound for parents like you're spoon feeding them, but if you do it consistently just for a period of time, you're equipping your kid, and eventually you can say, it's 11 o'clock, can't you go and start making lunch? And then they will have all their little things in place so they can be ready on at 12. And then it's like a huge achievement for them,
Yeah. We take things for granted, I think, when we don't have those challenges. Another thing that comes to mind, and this was a tip from a doctor who's an expert in helping children with remedial things, is to not only give them the tools and the understanding of how to work at their weak areas, but to help them discover what they are good at and to praise them and to develop those talents, because they need that balance to help them to have a good self-esteem, that they're not just terrible at being organized or terrible at being on time, but they're actually great at music, or they're really talented at drawing, or they're good with animals, whatever it is that's unique about each child. And I think so often we forget about that because we're so focused on this challenge and, you know, overcoming it, that we forget about the positive things that are in everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah, I used to also say to my kids, you know, this is your superpower. The fact that like even somebody, an adult that I know, can just focus on a topic and just dig so deep and get such intense knowledge about the topic that he could speak to scientists who are studying in that field, because he's just, you know, this tunnel vision and just understanding.
Yes.
The same thing with a kid of mine who's been diagnosed with ADHD, is that can cope with such a lot of input, you know, and can be aware of everything going on around them, and then still have empathy for the one who's getting lost behind. You know, they're just the capacity. But and it works beautifully in a home and a homeschool. I can understand why that in a classroom would just be agonizing for that poor child, because it's, I mean, there you're looking at 30 people giving input. You know, so it's something that can be celebrated, you know, and God doesn't make mistakes. I think that was the other thing that I always said to my kids: God doesn't make mistakes. He knows your neurological wiring, and you're here for a purpose. And in that way, we can kind of encourage our kids. So 3 things: don't define yourself by the label. Always keep challenging yourself. And then, you know, God doesn't make mistakes. And if I may, I just wanted to add one last thing to that, is that parents who have children who have got labels or learning difficulties, their journey is not going to look like Susie Q down the road, who's got 3 little children who sit and do their work and they tick their boxes and it all looks so neat and so pretty. And if we're comparing ourselves to that when our kids are daydreaming and we have to kind of pull their attention back 10 times in a day, or we have to make executive function training part of your day, you know, you're going to get down on yourself. So don't compare to Susie Q and her neurotypical kids. You know, just really give yourself over and enjoy the variety that's in front of you.
I think that's a great summary. Let's stop there.